Welcome back to our Tempo Storm Meta Snapshot breakdown. Two regions have now completed their playoffs, leaving only the Asia Pacific region to compete in theirs this weekend. As we highlighted in our lineup breakdown of the America's Winter Playoffs, many players brought different lineups from one another. Due to this, it's become more clear as to what decks are the best. There have also been a few new decks and a rise in power for some of the older ones. For example, players are now straying away from the Death Knight OTK Paladin and opting to play the Holy Wrath version as well, as it's faster and it does the job better than its counterpart. Another deck that has received more attention following playoffs is Mekathun Warlock. With the new build being played, players are realizing the deck's true potential. With the rise of Cloning Gallery Priest as well as Holy Wrath Paladin, Warrior loses a lot of its favorable matchups, leaving it to fall to tier 2 and lower. The meta continues to change as new strategies are developed, but these decks are the ones that lead tier 1. Subject 9 Hunter continues to be the best deck in the game. Hunter in general has a high power level, but this build in particular is better than the other ones. While still having access to all of Hunter's important tools, it also makes use of Subject 9 to have additional card draw. This deck is one of the faster Hunter builds, but it's still able to go toe-to-toe with the slower decks thanks to its hero cards. Subject 9 Hunter has a lot of good matchups, but does well against other forms of Hunter. In the Hunter matchups, the one that wins more is the one that's faster, which Subject 9 is. Having access to Emerald Spellstone also helps this matchup significantly. When it comes to bad matchups, Hunter struggles against decks that have access to a large amount of removal, such as Control Priest or Odd Warrior. Following Subject 9 Hunter on the tier list is Resurrect OTK Priest. This deck has been floating around for a while now, but it's the best that it's ever been. Its rise to dominance can be attributed to slower decks becoming better. As Odd Warrior became strong, Clone Priests began to prey on them. Priest also does well against the new Holy Wrath Paladin, giving it a large sample of good matchups. Resurrect Priest makes use of reviving the large spell power minions to deal an obscene amount of burst damage, hence what makes them strong in the slower games. In order to beat this Priest deck, aggro decks are being played. The worst matchups for the Priest are Odd Rogue and even Paladin, as these decks are too fast. Mid-range Hunter also makes an appearance as one of the best decks in the game. Like Subject 9 Hunter, Mid-range Hunter makes use of the early game minion package alongside the hero cards to close out games. While weaker than its Subject 9 counterpart, Mid-range Hunter is still an immensely versatile deck. Its good matchups come from all the Hunter archetypes aside from Subject 9 and the slower Paladin lists. The decks it wants to avoid playing against are the control decks with a lot of removal, or even Paladin. The last deck rounding off tier 1 this week is the new Holy Wrath Paladin. While players experimented with this deck earlier in the expansion, the new list cycles much faster and aims to close out games quicker than ever. This makes this form of Paladin better than the Death Knight variant in the majority of matchups. The deck's best matchup is against Odd Warrior, as this matchup is unlosable if piloted properly. The deck struggles to beat Resurrect Priest and Mekathun Warlock as they're too fast at achieving their own combo. While the meta continues to shift around almost weekly, these decks seem to be the ones that are most consistent and will likely stay on top of the game until the set rotation happens. There will likely be minor changes every few weeks to tier 1 due to players playing new decks in order to target what's popular in a sort of rock, paper, scissors fashion. As mentioned before, there are a few new decks that have popped up for this edition of the Meta Snapshot. The two key decks that have popped up are Holy Wrath Paladin and Mekathun Warlock. These two decks are both extremely strong, taking a place in the first and second tier respectively. Holy Wrath Paladin is a deck that has seen play but has always felt inferior to the Death Knight version, but for once, it's the reverse. The current list of Holy Wrath Paladin features an insane amount of cycle and allows for you to pull off your combo early in the game. Due to how the deck is built, you also have access to the Horseman game plan if needed. This makes this list not only faster, but more versatile in how you decide to go about winning the game. This deck will likely stick around and continue to dominate the meta. Mekathun Warlock was another deck that many players wrote off as more of a fun experience prior to Tars playing it at the European playoffs. After seeing Tars' list, players experimented with it and realized the potential the deck had, making many players' dreams come true. Mekathun Warlock is the best Mekathun deck by far. As time progresses, it's possible that it falls from grace, but for now it seems to be gaining a lot of traction. The second tier features a wide array of decks, with some of the new additions being previously featured in tier 1. The first deck in the tier list is Death Knight OTK Paladin. This deck is still dominant, but it's worse than the Holy Wrath version. By having the inherent randomness of the hero power, the deck can feel bad to play sometimes despite its strength. Warlock is another big contender in Tier 2. 3 out of 4 Warlock decks in the tier list find themselves in this tier, with Zoo being the odd one out. Life Tap proves to be as good as ever, making the class a real threat. The other decks in this tier are all viable, but are just more flawed than the Tier 1 decks. They have some good matchups, but they have more bad ones than the top decks. In order to counter this meta, some players have been turning to Odd Paladin. While Odd Paladin isn't the powerhouse that it once was, the deck still has some good matchups against Hunter. If you're getting tired of seeing Rexxar on the ladder, consider picking up this deck to try and gain an edge. Another deck you can play to help beat the meta would be Cube Warlock. While this deck struggles against the faster versions of Hunter, it does well against the other 2 decks in Tier 1. By adding both of these decks to your arsenal, you can easily gain an edge and beat the meta. The meta has been shaping itself into what it is for a few weeks now, and it seems that it's stabilizing on what decks are the best. Hunter has remained on top for a while, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, and the other decks are cementing their place in the metagame. Thanks for watching this video. We hope this helped you gain a better understanding of the metagame and help you climb the ladder. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe in order to stay up to date with Tempo Storm's Hearthstone content. See you next time.